Atlanta-based veteran news anchor Laurie Dhue is the founder of Laurie Dhue Media, which provides media relations counsel and communications training to a wide variety of clients. Dhue is one of only 3 news anchors to have hosted shows on all 3 major cable news networks, CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News Channel. She most recently served as the primary news anchor on The Blaze TV. In the last 25 years, Dhue has produced or reported on every major news story and has interviewed countless world leaders, politicians, entertainers, and other prominent newsmakers. Dhue is in long-term recovery from alcohol and drug addiction and is one of the nation's leading recovery advocates. Recovery Today magazine host Sherry Gaba sits down with Laurie Dhue to discuss a life in recovery.
Laurie, this is it. You're sober. Your life is completely renewed. Tell me about it.
It's all about transformation, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
And we're nothing unless we're continually changing. So the last 10 and a half years for me have been about transformation. And that didn't happen overnight. You know, alcoholism is a progressive disease and our recovery is a progressive process. So the last 10 and a half years, one day at a time, has been a constant change. You gotta grow or you gotta go. That was one saying I heard early in recovery, and at first that made no sense to me. And now I know that that's true. We've got to constantly evolve while living in this happy place of an intoxicant-free life. And it's a great life.
It's a great life. And so I bet you wouldn't have known that at that time when you were outed about your drinking or your recovery.
Right. I had been sober for about 4 years when I was outed on the internet. And a gossip blog in Washington, D.C. put up this story on the web that said former Fox News anchor Laurie Dhue was an alcoholic and drug addict. And I thought, oh no, it's out there, my life is over. And instead, it was the beginning of this next chapter of my life, which has been the last 6.5 years becoming a national advocate for recovery and letting America know that recovery works and it's available, help is possible, hope is possible, and that the tens of millions of Americans who are suffering don't have to do so in silence. And their families can learn more about the disease the more we come together as a country, and we've got to come together to treat this disease like any other disease.
So what is your hope doing this? What is your biggest hope? In other words, you know, you were kind of in the closet. Many people are, many families are. There's so much still stigma, even though it's 2017. So what is your biggest hope being out there? And what's it like one day, you know, sort of being this, quote, celebrity news anchor, and then the next being an advocate, which is really being a service, which is really part of sobriety?
Well, service is everything in sobriety. If I'm not helping another alcoholic or addict or just another human being, then I'm not doing my job. And we know, those of us who are in recovery, who are in the 12-step program that I'm in, know that it is all about helping others. You got to give it away to keep it. And so that's what I try to do each and every day of my life, whether it is working with women in a 12-step program or in the various boards that I'm on, or even the prior work I did with the Obama administration. Whatever I'm doing, I'm trying to help people understand this disease, put a face on this disease to show people that this is what addiction looks like, but this is also what recovery looks like too. And it's really been a beautiful journey. It hasn't been without its ups and downs. But I feel like if I'm not helping somebody every day, that I'm not focusing on my primary purpose, which is to stay sober and help another alcoholic.
So Laurie, there's a young woman junkie out there, and she's strung out. She wants to do what you're doing, and she just believes dreams are not possible for her. She's in that victim consciousness, you know, and she wants to be a reporter. She wants to be a host. What would you tell her?
I would tell her that she doesn't have to die. I would tell her that she doesn't have to keep using. I would also ask her if she truly wants to get sober. Because you can't make anybody give up drinking or drugs. They have to want to do it. So if this person who's watching me truly has a desire to put away intoxicants and to start life over, I would say, let's do this. Let's do it together as a community. You don't have to suffer in silence. There are so many resources out there for anybody and everybody who wants help. If you want help, you can get it.
Absolutely.
But you've got to really want to do it, because nobody can do it for you. But you know, addiction doesn't have to end in jails, institutions, or death. I'm living proof that you can go on to live a happy, healthy, really fun, really exciting life without intoxicants. If you had told me 10.5 years ago that I could actually have a fun life without drinking and drugging, I would have laughed and said, you're crazy, because I couldn't go a day or two without a drink or a drug. Now I can't imagine having a drink or a drug, and that's a miracle.
It is a miracle. You know, Laurie, sometimes people talk about the high bottom drunk or functional alcoholism, and does that really exist? And I'm wondering if that's part of your story.
Very much part of my story. You could say I was extremely high functioning, considering the fact that I had my own national TV show on Fox News Channel. And before that, MSNBC, and before that, CNN. So I was suffering through my disease on a very national stage with 1 million or 2 people watching me. Now, I was never drunk on the air, but I would come in deeply hungover to work several times a week. How I was functioning, I'm not quite sure. Because, you know, life is tough enough without adding alcohol and drugs to the mix. So 10 years past, I still don't understand how I was able to function at a pretty high level. I think it was sheer will and sheer determination. I have that will and that determination now to stay sober. And what I learn in my 12-step program is that I've got to turn my will and my life over to the care of my higher power, which happens to be God. And what I know is that I'm not alone. My higher power is with me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
Yeah, so how did you know? How did you know this was a real problem if you were functioning at that level?
The last few months of my drinking and drugging were awful. I was having a lot of blackouts. In fact, it was mostly blackout drinking and drugging, where I wouldn't remember what I had done the night before, or, you know, I didn't remember a conversation I'd had with somebody the night before. And I just felt awful, physically, spiritually, emotionally. I was completely bankrupt. And I woke up one day and said, I'm gonna die. If I keep drinking and drugging the way I am, I'm not gonna make it to my 40th birthday. And this was when I was about 38. And a couple of things happened that made me realize that I needed to stop, and stop now. That the jig was up, and that I wanted to keep living my life, and I wanted a second chance at life. And so on March 14th, 2007, I made the decision to begin the journey of recovery.
Amazing. That's an amazing story. And I think it's really an important story, because there are successful women out there listening to this interview right now and don't even, don't know what to do. Like,
that's right.
Because I go to work every day. I take my kids to school.
Right.
And
it has nothing to do with whether you're a hard worker or a good person or your socioeconomic level. It doesn't matter. Addiction is the great equalizer, and it affects everyone the same way.
Yes.
And women are often so afraid to come forward because of the stigma and the shame that is attached to this disease. Women are less likely to raise their hands and say, I need help. First of all, they're the ones who are holding the family unit together. So they feel like perhaps they can't ask for help or go to rehab or get daily treatment because they're running the household. When really, the first thing they need to do is get treated so that then they can become a stronger individual and a better parent, a better spouse, a better partner, and a better member of the community who is healthy and can contribute the maximum amount to society.
Did you understand alcoholism? I mean, not everybody understands it. Was it in your family?
It is in my family.
Okay.
It is.
So you
it's in every American family, some form of addiction, whether it's pure alcoholism or opiate addiction or food addiction or hard drugs, heroin, cocaine, whatever it is, It touches every American family.
That's a really important point. I know even in my own family there was gambling addiction.
Yeah,
And
that's a very big addiction.
Didn't realize, oh wow, could be the same gene.
Yeah,
You know, could be
addiction
passed
is
on.
addiction.
Exactly.
No matter how
Exactly.
you slice it, no matter what it looks like, it's really kind of the same thing.
So you replaced the addiction with this service work that you're doing. So what do you think about this this horrible opiate epidemic that we have, and what are some of the things that you're involved in? I think you have a documentary coming out this fall.
Yes, I'm very proud to have worked with Governor Andrew Cuomo's office, the New York State Governor's office, the Office of Alcohol and Substance Abuse, called OASIS, and I'm very proud to be part of this documentary called Reversing the Stigma. It's going to be released in September, we hope, and we hope we're going to get some widespread national coverage of this. It is all about reducing the stigma so that people can feel free to ask for help. And we're in an enormous opioid crisis in this country. You know, the CDC declared a few years ago that we're in an epidemic. And we know that the Opioid Commission that President Trump put together came out with its report here in early August, in which Governor Chris Christie of New Jersey, who's the chair of this commission, he's asking Trump to declare a national emergency because that's how serious the problem is. Governor Christie is saying, hey, Congress, it's time to focus on funding for helping people, because I just want to read a couple of statistics here. We have 142 Americans dying every single day of opiate addiction. That death toll is the same as how many people died on 9/11?
Wow.
Every 3 weeks. So you've got 142 Americans dying every day. That is close to 52,000 Americans. 33,000 Americans die of opioid overdoses every year, and then another 20,000 die of drug overdoses.
It's more than car accidents and handgun
handgun
accidents.
deaths.
Yeah,
So when you
amazing.
have more people dying of opiate and drug overdoses than you have handgun deaths and car crashes combined, folks, we've got a really, really big problem here. Add that 53,000 to the 88,000 who die of alcoholism every year, and doing the rough math, that's 141,000 people a year dying. Imagine if that many people died of cancer every year. Can you imagine the outrage?
Right.
Well, we need the outrage if we're going to do something about this, because too many people are dying.
So the solutions are what? More rehab time? I know the insurance companies are cutting out rehab time. Sometimes you can only stay for 2 weeks, sometimes
yeah.
less. I mean, what
I
are
think
the...
insurance is a big problem. I think a lot of insurance companies really do not understand the disease of addiction. And they think that a couple of weeks in an outpatient program or 28 days in a rehab is going to cure you. Well, we know there's no cure for addiction.
We need long-term recovery.
We need long-term recovery. We need funding. We need people to care about this disease as much as they care about AIDS or breast cancer or diabetes or autism. This is a killer.
So what about, you and I had a conversation prior to this interview about harm reduction, different paths of recovery. What are your thoughts about that? Because although I'm a big believer in old school 12-step as the foundation, and that's what I work with, what are your thoughts?
I think there isn't just one way to recover. And the word recovery means different things to different people. For me, it means complete abstinence. For me, being in recovery means that I will hopefully live the rest of my life one day at a time without a drink or a drug. I can't take one drink of alcohol. I can't just do one line of cocaine or smoke a joint. For me, that leads me down a very dark and deep path. For other people, recovery means going from shooting heroin to eating pot candy now. So that's
sounds
a win.
like a much better win. Exactly.
It is, and look, there are a lot of 12-step purists and people who say abstinence is the only way.
They don't even believe in psychotropic meds.
That's right. Well, look, that is fine and everyone's entitled to their opinion, but we know and science tells us that it's a win when somebody goes from shooting heroin to eating a cannabis brownie. That's a win.
Well, you know, it's sort of like people will say sometimes you just need recovery and a higher power. Well, it is our higher power that possibly brought these scientific solutions. right?
Good point.
Or these people that are coming up with other paths.
Look, for a lot of people, simply working the 12 steps, which means working with other people and staying abstinent, it works. It doesn't work for everybody, though. And we should not stigmatize or shame those people who have moved from shooting heroin or being on meth to now eating cannabis gummy bears. There's no shame there.
Who are we to judge?
Who are we to judge?
Who is anyone to
That's
judge
right.
if they haven't walked that path?
Yeah.
So what
exactly.
about families? We have a lot of families that tune into this show and read our magazine. They've done sort of the round robin where they keep putting their kids in rehab and they keep relapsing, and they've sort of, found their lives unmanageable. What would you say to that parent out there that doesn't want to give up hope but is just so tired?
I'm so glad you brought up the effect on the family unit.
I'm a big advocate for the family.
Right, and you should be, because families suffer untold amounts.
It's our disease. The addict is our disease.
That's right. This doesn't just affect the individual. It affects the nuclear family, the extended family, the community at large,
the workforce,
co-workers. That's right. And for families, I can only say, try to be patient to the extent that you can. And then I know that after months and years, some families simply run out of patience, and then that's when it turns to detaching with love and saying, we can't help you anymore, you're on your own. Then it's up to the person to decide whether or not they really want this. But it devastates families. It takes children away from their parents. It makes people widows and widowers and leaves a lot of children without moms and dads.
So I get a lot of questions written to me. Where does the enabling stop? Where does the support begin? There's sort of that navigating between the two.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's plenty of help out there for families. They just have to know where to look for it. Starting online is a great way to do it. Joining a community, looking into a 12-step program. Al-Anon is very popular for families. But really, it's about trying to communicate with the family member who is in active addiction and understanding that this is a disease and that we are not bad people. We are sick people. And there's not a whole lot of choice involved. People often ask me, well, Laurie, isn't addiction a choice? Well, it's not exactly a black or white issue. There are shades of gray with this.
Well, sometimes people will make relapse a really dirty word. I often say relapse is part of the disease. And I often feel like with families, it's like, okay, just bring it on. I mean, not bring it on like bring on the relapse, but it is part of this story, maybe part of your family member's story. It might be part of your story as an addict alcoholic. Stop fighting with that word. It's just a word.
Relapse, right. Some people don't get it on the first try. I was very fortunate. I have not relapsed yet.
Right.
I could walk out of this studio, go grab a cold beer, and say, you know what, I've been sober 10 and a half years, I got this. I'm going to go have a cold beer
Happens all the
on this
time.
beautiful LA day. I'm going to have some tacos and a couple beers, I'll be fine. I can't. I've got to be vigilant because I don't want to relapse.
Right.
However, that said, there's no shame in relapsing.
Exactly.
It is such a big part of recovery. And the good news is you can start again anytime. It takes what it takes.
Exactly. No, I love that your non-judgmental stance.
Judgmental.
You have such
Yeah.
a great story.
I mean, judgment has no place in recovery.
Right.
And, this is not a moral issue. It's not a moral failing. Addiction affects the individual, but it does not define the individual. I think that's a really important message to get across, that we are not our disease. We are not moral failures. We are human beings who are fighting this fight every day of our lives to try to stay on the right path. And the more that the American people understand this, and understand that it's not a moral issue, it's a healthcare issue and it's a human rights issue, the better off we are all going to be.
Well, I'm just so grateful that you did this interview, because really it's all about people like you setting examples and modeling what is possible, instead of, you know, the latest opiate death or overdose of a celebrity or musician.
It's so much more than overdose
So
deaths.
much more.
There is so much hope out there.
Exactly.
And there are at least 23 to 25 million Americans like me who are in recovery, who are trudging this road of happy destiny. There is a better life out there. And we're all here to show that.
Yes.
And if 25 million Americans had cancer or had HIV, it would be a completely different picture. So that's why I'm here. I'm talking to you. I travel around the country. I share my story because I want people to understand that this is a very, very serious thing. We've got to take it seriously. But the good news is, you can move on and become a very happy individual who's working, who's paying taxes, who contributes to society, who is back in the family, has lots of friends. It's a wonderful life.
It's all possible. So what's next for you, Laurie?
Well, I've got a lot of exciting things coming down the pike. After 18 years in New York, I moved back to my hometown of Atlanta last year. And I'm really really excited to be involved in some organizations. For instance, Kennesaw State University in Atlanta has a terrific center for young people in recovery.
Like a collegiate
It's a
program.
collegiate recovery program. I'm very proud to be on that board. There's a lot of good work being done there. And this is all about helping young people thrive on campus, and there are dozens of them around the country, and I just think it's terrific.
Yes.
If you get sober in college and you want to stay sober, you're going to get the support you need.
Well, that's where all the binge drinking goes on. So if there's
that's how my alcoholism started, was binge drinking at a large state university.
Right.
And then it just continued from there. So we know that if we can get to people when they're young,
exactly.
and I think Kennesaw State is doing a terrific job with this, so I'm proud to be part of that.
Great.
And I am also about to launch a business where I consult with companies on talking to their employees about addiction and mental health issues. I think a lot of companies are not aware of just how many people are suffering. And billions and billions of dollars are spent on employees with alcohol and mental illness issues. Companies could save a whole lot of money every year if they paid more attention to the disease. And
So sort of a prevention program?
well, yes, my idea is to go in and talk to companies to educate them about addiction and recovery, to help work with their employees, to get the employees the help they need so that they can become more productive and therefore save the company money and actually improve the company's bottom line.
Well, what's so great about that is that you may also hit a family member too. You know, you may be talking about addiction thinking that one of your employees is an addict, but it may be one of those employees' spouse or child. So I think that's really important and powerful. Yeah.
Well, addiction costs this country a lot of money. And let's say that you were an employee at a company and you came in and you announced to the head of HR that you had breast cancer and you needed time off. You would get all the support in the world.
Right.
Instead, if you walk into an HR department and say, I'm an alcoholic, I need help, they're not going to exactly support you the same way, and that's got to change. And so that's what I want to try to do.
Great. Great. So you're up to some great things.
Well, I am, but I'm happy to be in LA. LA Sherry baby.
I love it. Well, thank you again for this amazing interview and for all that you're doing in this fight against addiction.
Well, it is a fight, but it's one I think we can win. We've just got to come together because we can do together what we cannot do apart.
That's right, and it started right here. Thank you again for an amazing Recovery Today magazine interview.